Hello, ladies. Hello. Trace here. So excited. I'm so excited about this topic. I am really excited to dive in with you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. So, if you are joining me live in this group, comment live below. That way, I know you are joining me. Way I know you are here. And if you are watching this on replay, maybe the 1 p.m. in the middle of the afternoon is not supportive to you. Totally get it. Comment replay. So I know that you watched this, that you gained some information, that you took time out of your busy schedule to just pour into yourself and really fulfill that growth mindset. So if you're here joining me, I'm glad you're here. And I'm super excited about this topic. And reason for that, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty here in a second. But the reason for that is I'm just, when it comes to little people, if you have not heard my story before, I actually used to coach cheer and gymnastics. I thought I was going to be in that industry forever. And I really thought that I was going to be able to impact children through fitness or through, coaching, through like actually running a all-star cheer program. And I quickly realized that I'm not the one that's going to be pouring into these children. It is mostly their parents. And so that's what shifted me into adult fitness. And here we are today, like 12 years later or something like that. So I'm excited to dive in with this topic, which is positive palate mastery. Again, this training is really going to be focusing on conversation around your food, around mealtime, and really helping you guys have some action steps on what has worked well for our family, and leaving here today with some steps and some tricks to implement inside of your own home to see successful progressions in your children's eating habits. And so I'm excited to dive in with that. So again, my name is Chase Williams. If you're new to this community, or maybe you're new to seeing me do a live training, whatever the case may be, I am a mom of 3 girls, and I am a faithful follower of Jesus. And so conversation around that is very common in our household. I am a personal trainer and nutritionist, and I am the leader. I just read the word leader because I was looking at my notes. But I am the owner of Chaseland Fitness, which is an online coaching program to help millennial moms create sustainability in their fitness and nutrition journey, but also create a household of health. And so and this is exactly what we're going to be covering today, is how do we do this in unison as a family. And so again, what we're going to be covering today is really just one, how we're going to get our children to explore food. We're going to figure out how to balance our plates for yourself and then also for your children. How do we get this balanced food regimen for them where they actually tried all the food, right? And consume it, because it's not about just putting food on the plate. We actually want them to try the food and eat the food. And so we're going to be talking about what that looks like. And then the last piece to this is obviously it's a positive palate mastery, right? And so this too, we're going to be covering mindful communication from you as the parent, and how your food values and mindsets basically can be passed on to them. And so we're going to talk about that as well. And really just giving you guys some tips and tricks that you can implement into your own home in your eating regimen for your family. So excited to dive in. So now what I'm going to ask you is, if any time during this training you're like, have a question, feel free to drop it in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. I want to answer questions for you guys. I want to be supportive to y'all on what you're actually experiencing in your home, and really want to make sure that I'm answering those questions for you guys. So if you have a question that pops up, drop it in the comment section as we go through this live training. Okay. And then number 2, if at any time during this training you're like, oh my gosh, that was a good nugget, or that was good, comment value throughout the whole training. So if there's a nugget that you're like, ooh, that was good, comment value. If you're like, ooh, that lands for me, comment value. I want to see that you guys are gaining some information and some actionable tasks that you guys can implement into your own home from this training. So I want to make sure that it's supportive to you guys. Okay. So let's talk about like why is this topic actually something that you should be concerned about? Why is having a conversation around food actually something that you should be aware of? Like, why are we talking about what to change and edit when it comes to your children's diets and your children's nutrition? And so I'm gonna go over a couple of like statistics today for you guys, just bringing awareness around them. I'm sure some of them you've heard before. I'm sure have like either heard it or seen it, or have some sort of awareness around some of these conversations or things that I'm going to cover. But I think the bigger question is here is it's not anyone else's duty, it's not anyone else's job but your own home. And so for us, or even like culture to be dependent on having someone come in and changing our food industry or making shifts or oh well those ingredients shouldn't even stuff like yes there's that bigger picture, but it really boils down to you, your home, your household, and what you can control on a smaller level to make sure that you are creating the best fit and the best space for your kids and their own nutrition. And not only just like what they're consuming, but what they think. Right. And so we're going to get into those details here in a second. But again, why is this important? So, some of the statistics around this conversation is 1 in 5 kids in America right now are obese. Okay. Yes, 1 in 5 kids. And so, should we be concerned about this? Yeah. Yes, we should. It should be concerning to us because that means, and like if you look at your people on your street, like, or even in your neighborhood, like 1 in 5 of those kids are struggling with obesity. And so, what can we do as a family to make sure that we are working on this? And I'm going to use the word epidemic, right? Like, because it is something that we struggle with as America. And so, how can we step into making sure that our kids are living healthier lives and we are setting them up for success when it comes to adulthood, preteens, um, and they're again as once they become parents, right? And so what are we doing to make sure that they have the tools as they're growing, as they're learning, as they're implementing, what habits can we help them create? Okay. And then the next piece here is 1 in 3 kids actually eat fast food once a day. That is like 13% of children's diets are eating and consuming fast food. I saw this statistic the other day and I was like, what? You've got to be kidding me. Like that kind of blew my mind for a few reasons. Number one, the financial investment that takes from a family to be investing and spending the finances on once a day eating out. And then also, too, like it being 13% of their diet. 13% is fast food coming from a restaurant, with a whole bunch of other topics and conversations we're not getting into tonight or today on this training. But when you guys hear that, what lands for you? Like, is that something that you guys like? What is y'all's current um, eating habits around fast food? Is it once a week? Is it twice a month? Like, drop it in the comments. I would love to hear from you guys. Like, where do you guys stand on that? Because even though that is a statistic, doesn't mean like everyone here in this Facebook group is like follows that statistic. So drop that below. Want to hear what from y'all. What is that for you guys? For as y'all as a family, what are your kids consuming and concerns to maybe just fast food? And I'm not gonna lie, like we just had Chick-fil-A today. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's not that it's not part of my family's household, but I just want it to bring it up in concerns to awareness. So 13% of their diets, that means they're eating fast food at least once a week or at least once a day. And then obviously I'm gonna show this chart here for you guys because the biggest thing I wanted you to know here is like you can see on this chart that it's showing the blue is being children with obesity and how it is actually connected to more chronic conditions. And so we've got all of these things going on, that basically children are experiencing with because of the higher influx of obesity. And so again, why is this important? It's because this is what's going on in America right now, and this is how our children are being set up. And what we can do from it is actually change our own habits and create some things inside of our own household that can make shifts in this. For these type of statistics. And so as you can see, again, higher obesity means chronic illness, right? And so having higher percentages of these different spaces. And so I just wanted to, again, bring up some of the topics or some of the things that, like, why this should be important and what kind of struck me in actually wanting to go over this whole topic and this process here. So before we dive in, I'm going to be here for about 30 minutes total. But I wanted to give you guys a little bit of like my own background in this space. And so wanted to give you a little bit of my story around food, my story around nutrition, and kind of what had shifted for me personally. So um, I grew up in the 90s. Okay. All of you here are all millennial moms. So majority of you are grew up in the 90s or had similar stories or can relate to probably what I'm going to tell you here today. But it was the you got to finish your plate or you got to eat all your food or oh, you asked for that, so you have to eat it type of thing. And then also too, it was the start of a very high influx of processed foods. I don't know statistics around that growth season, but a lot of the changes and shifts on the ingredients and foods started shifting early in the 80s, which basically all of us, right, growing up in the 80s and 90s, experienced that. And so my personal story, I remember this exact moment with my stepdad. And if my mom watches this, she's going to be like, oh my gosh, you're talking about this again. But yes, I am. I am talking about this again. So when I was like 7 years old, I remember sitting at the dinner table. I was in the room all by myself. We lived in Germany, and my stepdad had made me like a hot dog. I think it was like one or two hot dogs. He had made me hot dogs for dinner. And I remember this. I remember the color of my plate. I remember where exactly where I was sitting. I remember the color of my shirt. Like I remember vividly this entire moment. And I remember getting in so much trouble because I was not finishing my hot dog. I was like crying, but like crocodile tears crying in this space because I did not finish my hot dog and I was not finishing it. And I could not get up from my seat because I hadn't finished my food. And that's just one of the stories. My stepdad did this to me quite often. And when I think back on that story, like here I am sharing like childhood trauma right now, but but I think of that topic and I think of what I experienced then. And I knew as soon as I had my kids and as soon as I started raising my own children, I was like, there are things that I'm going to be doing differently. And that's why it's been such a huge factor for me on what can I do as a mom to make sure I'm setting my children up for success. And even though that wasn't like my entire childhood experience around food, I do remember those very specific moments where it was like kind of traumatizing for me, right? Like I'm being forced to eat this food that actually tasted like crap. I don't remember why that hot dog tasted so gross, but it was very gross. And so that's kind of like what my background was. And so when I actually came into implementing and having children, I was like, how can I make this difference? How can I have conversation about food with them? How can I share with them what's good for their bodies and what's not? And so, again, if there's anything that's landing for you guys in this story, please comment below. I want to hear from y'all what is actually hitting home for y'all um, as well. And so, um, okay, and then I guess basically around this is kind of transition into also what I coach inside my coaching program, which is obviously going into conversation around, food, right? And like, what can we do to change our own habits and jump into that? So let's get into this. Now that you guys have a little bit of understanding of like why this is important, a little bit of my background in this, um, you know, story of my with food and what I want you to leave here today with very easy tasks that you guys can actually implement into your own home. Okay. So let's start with number one. How can we get our children like exploring food more? And what can we do to encourage them to try something new or to try all the food on their plates? And what can we do to when you put something green on their plate, like why is it so like nerve wracking? And a lot of that comes from your like personal in food insecurities, or you're like, oh, I know that they should have broccoli, right? But like, how can we actually get our kids consuming this food? And so when it comes to exploring food, I think the biggest thing here is giving them exposure. Depending on the age of your kids, obviously it's going to vary. It's going to be a variety here because obviously a little toddler is going to have a different experience versus like a teenager, right? But the sooner you start this process, the easier it is going to be able to carry these conversations and help them develop really healthy habits in their eating regimen and in their well balanced nutrition. And so, when we're looking to explore food or we're looking to introduce new foods, the best thing here is just giving them a variety. The more times that you change up what they're eating, or the more times that you add something new to their plate, or the more times that implement, veggies into the actual plate is going to, which we're going to talk about balancing our plates here in a second. But when you introduce new things, have a conversation about it. And really, what we've done in our own home that has helped this process is we have some of our staples, right? The staple foods that we eat, but we are always trying new stuff. And when the conversation with the children goes, it's like, hey, we're doing, I don't know, whatever, we're doing XYZ soup. We're doing this soup tonight. And they're like, well, I don't like soup. You're like, oh, well, have you ever had this soup? And then, creating conversation. It really starts with not just being like, oh, that's dinner, eat your dinner. It's, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. This is what we're trying. Involving them in the entire process to help them see what the food is, see how to prep the food, see what food's going into the actual soup, and involving them in the conversation. And so, again, there's going to be an actual topic here where we're going to go into mindful communication, but it really starts with exploring the food with them to start. And then, also when you're thinking about exploring food, we really want to make sure that we're introducing things a little at a time. It doesn't have to be everything all at once, a little bit at a time. And so that kind of brings me to my next point here, which is going to be your balancing act. What can we do? What does their plate need to look like? Right? Like, how should we be designing meals for them, right? Or even with them, depending on your child's age. Um, you know, and the again, things that have worked well for our family is really just putting in things that they are already enjoy, things that they love, and adding in the new stuff. So if I know that my kids are going to sit there and consume rice because it's their favorite, um, then the best thing that I can do there is the best thing. I love it. The best thing I can do there is adding the things that they already love. So if they love rice, of course I'm going to put rice on their plate. And then my next step to that is going to be adding in, I don't know, maybe it's a new Brussels sprouts, right? Maybe they've never done Brussels sprouts before. Or maybe they've never done the version of Brussels sprouts that we did that night. So I'm not going to like load majority of their plate on there to where it looks scary. It's going to be more inviting, like a little bit at a time. And so when you're doing the new introductions, you want to add things on there that they already love, that they already enjoy, that you know that they're going to eat, instead of an entire plate of food that they've never had before, right? That's going to be more of a daunting experience for them versus if you just did a little bit at a time. And so when you think balancing act, I always tell our kids, like, do you have rainbows on your plate? And the biggest thing is you don't want all your foods to be the same color. Example of what this would look like for the same color. I've got mashed potatoes, I've got mac and cheese, and then I've got breaded chicken nuggets. Everything on there is the same bland color, right? Like everything is the same color. That would not be a well balanced plate, right? So what I encourage my children, I'm like, hey, well, look at your plate. Like, what things are on your plate? What colors do you have on there, right? And so encouraging them to have a variety of colors. Even if you're an adult, you should be having a variety of colors on your plate. But we're just talking about our little people here today. So adding those things on there and making sure that they've got different colors, different things that they can be consuming on there as well. So let's just say mashed potatoes. green beans with that, or a side salad, or and then not just like lettuce. Like who wants just lettuce, right? Like adding the things on there, having them explore it, or even just putting it side by side to make a fun little salad on their own, right? And so giving them a little bit of a balanced plate. And then, of course, you guys know I'm going to say protein. If you've been around for a hot second, you know that I'm going to talk about protein, but making sure that they've got a well balanced plate. If you want more information on what that would look like, guys, I would love to do another training on actually like balancing a plate and like building all this out for one, you, of course, but also for the family. Like, what are we going to build out that everyone's going to consume, right? So again, just making sure that you've got a well-balanced plate. And then it just really, this next point here is just going to take me into the mindful communication. This piece is really important because if you did all of those things without having the conversation around the food, there it's not going to be as beneficial. And that's why I really called this like the positive palate, right? It's positive. We want this to be a positive experience. We want food to be a positive space, not a negative space. I just posted on Instagram yesterday. I was like, how about we stop saying that we're eating bad foods, and actually just shift it with, okay, I enjoyed the food I ate today, and tomorrow I'm going to eat food that is going to fuel me, right? Because the point of food is actually to give us nourishment and fuel. And so, again, back to, how can we have this conversation around food? It's really just coming up with like those food values. What are your personal? I'm going to switch gears here and not necessarily talk about the children, but think about you. Think about what are your food values? How do you, when you look at food and you're building out food, like what is your personal relationship with food? Is it positive? Is it, you know, like an awkward like relationship? Like when you think about how you view food, is it an emotional response? Like is food for you only emotional? Do you only go to food and consume more when you're high stress? Are you consuming lots of food when you are um, you know, that time of month, right? Like what is it an emotional response for you, or is it something where you're like, I have a great relationship with food. I know when to I know how to eat a well-balanced meal. I know how to stop when I'm full. Like what are the things that you personally are experiencing in concerns to your food and your mindset? Because here's what's crazy is those internal views that you have about food and that your relationship with food, if you are not personally are not working on it, it's going to be passed down to your little people. And so when we think about mindful communication, that really boils down to like really focusing on what your internal beliefs are, and editing and auditing yourself to making sure that we're constantly having those things on the forefront of our minds to have those conversations. Okay. And then when we talk about food, it really can be a fun conversation, starting with what is this food, right? What does this food do for our bodies? Because there can be, instead of saying that's good food, that's bad food, that's healthy, that's not healthy, like this creates this whole like other thing. So talking about all the foods and what those types of foods do to our body. um Example of this, and something that one of my clients actually shared with me, she was like, that was so, I had shared on one of our coaching calls with her about how you could just say to your kids like, hey, this food right here, example, protein. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before. Protein is something that helps our muscles, helps make us strong, it helps give us strength, it helps us do things. And so telling them, and that's a very simplified version, but as they grow older, this version is going to look different, right? But if you personally don't know what that version is or what these foods are doing to your body, then that's what you want to start with first. Educating yourself in the nutrition realm of getting more tips and tricks on what these foods are actually doing for yourself, in order for you to really go into what's it called? Learning about it. Okay. So, and then when you, again, kind of back to what can we do for mindset or the conversation, right? How can we make it a great space? Back to good foods, bad foods. I like to stay in the space of good, better, and best. This is the best version for you. This is good for you. This is better for you, but this is the best. Right. And then everything can fall in those lines. Right. Same thing with, okay, I want a treat. Great. There's good, better, and best in concerns to like the treat world or even the sweets. And the making sure that you know what those categories might be. And that's something that, again, I coach and everything inside my coaching program, right? It's like, how can we really shift our mindset around looking at food differently, as well as not making food a punishment. And I think that's kind of brings it back to the conversation that like my stepdad had done with me, right? Like, okay, we don't want to have food being such a negative space. We want to bring it into you know, which that was my experience, right? Like, oh, you don't eat your food, it's bad. Like that's bad if you don't finish your food. So again, reframing everything, and just kind of bringing it back to that space. So if you are, kind of in that space of like, wait, I don't know what my nutrition looks like I kind of need to work on my own nutrition conversation within myself, because it really boils down to, what do you want your children to learn? What do you want them to implement? How do you want to set them up for success? And it starts with you first. And inside my Chaseland Fitness Core program, that is something like we actually lay out, and we focus on, eating mindfully and whole foods, and really shifting how we look at the food in a whole, and really pulling it into like, no, this food is for fuel. And how do we do that? And what do we do in a progressive manner? And that's exactly what I teach inside with our 3M method inside of the Chaseland Fitness program. And so if that's something you're like, hey, yes, I'm definitely wanting to step into what this looks like, just comment below 3M. Comment 3M. I'll send you a quick message on kind of what our strategy looks like with the 3M method, and we can kind of start a conversation there. So again, comment 3M if you were like, hey, yes, I want to work on what I am personally doing and developing your relationship with your food. And again, drop that below. So 3M is what you're going to comment. Guys, I am so excited you joined me today. I want to hear from y'all. What was your biggest takeaway? As you guys know, this is something I ask my clients as well. Like, what is something that is landing for you? And so drop that in the comments below. Biggest takeaway from today, what you're going to be implementing into your own household and your own space, in order to develop a household of health. So again, comment below what that takeaway is. And again, if you are looking to focus on that 3M method or hear a little bit more about what that would look like, comment 3M below and we'll start a conversation and see if that strategy would be supportive to you. Guys, thanks so much. I'm so glad you guys joined me, and looking forward to bringing the next training, the next masterclass to you guys. And yeah, love you guys. Bye.